5 True Sleepover Nights That Ended in Absolute Horror. Part 1. The Whispering Attic. The first sleepover that ended in absolute horror happened at Mia's house, an old, weathered Victorian sitting alone at the end of Wren Street. The house had been in her family for generations, and although it looked beautiful during the day, by night it took on a far more sinister tone. Mia, myself, and 2 of our friends, Natalie and Kara, thought it would be the perfect setting for a spooky, fun-filled night. We had no idea what we were about to invite into our lives. It all started as sleepovers usually do. Pizza, soda, whispered gossip, and scary movies that made us shriek and laugh at the same time. As midnight approached, the house grew colder. Not the kind of chill you expect when the temperature drops, but a deep, almost wet cold that settled into your bones. We bundled under blankets and dared each other to play silly games. Light as a feather, Ouija board, Bloody Mary, the kind of harmless stuff you grow up believing is just make-believe. But Mia had something better. "My grandma told me we have a spirit in the attic," she said with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Harmless. Just a little boy who plays tricks." We were instantly intrigued. Half scared, half thrilled, we demanded she show us. The attic door was located in Mia's room, a crooked little hatch in the ceiling with a dangling rope. She dragged a chair over, pulled it down, and a wooden ladder creaked its way into the room. A soft, musty smell poured down from above, thick with the scent of forgotten memories. Flashlights in hand, we climbed up one by one. The attic was filled with dusty trunks, old furniture, and moth-eaten curtains that fluttered even though there was no breeze. Shadows danced around us, and every creak of the wood made us jump. We decided to sit in a circle and try to talk to the spirit. Kara, ever the brave one, took out her phone and started recording, hoping to catch something on video. "Is anyone here with us?" she asked loudly. For a moment, there was only silence. Then tap, tap, tap from the far corner of the attic behind an old wardrobe. We froze. Our flashlights swiveled toward the sound. Nothing. Just a stack of dusty boxes and the wardrobe standing silent and still. "Probably a mouse," Natalie whispered, though her voice shook. We tried again. "What's your name?" Mia asked. This time, a soft whisper floated through the air. None of us could make out what it said, but we heard it. All of us. Kara's phone, still recording, flickered strangely, glitching with static for a split second. "Okay, nope," Natalie said, already crawling toward the ladder. But just as we were about to leave, we heard it again, this time clearer. "Help me." The words slithered across the attic like smoke. I felt every hair on my body stand on end. The wardrobe creaked, as if something had shifted behind it. Mia, now visibly pale, insisted we leave, and none of us argued. We scrambled down the ladder, pulling it up quickly behind us. We locked the attic hatch and pushed the chair back into place, trying to laugh it off, but the fun had drained from the night. An unspoken unease hung over us. We retreated to the living room, made a nest of pillows and blankets, and put on cartoons to drown out the fear. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of footsteps. I blinked into the darkness. The TV was a soft blue glow in the background, playing some mindless late-night show. Natalie and Kara were asleep beside me, but Mia was gone. Another creak came from upstairs. I shook Kara awake. She groggily sat up, and when I told her Mia was missing, she elbowed Natalie awake too. The 3 of us tiptoed up the stairs, flashlights held high like weapons. "Mia?" I whispered. A soft thud answered me, from her bedroom. We pushed the door open slowly. Mia was standing on the chair, reaching up toward the attic hatch. Her movements were stiff, mechanical, like a puppet on strings. Her face was blank, eyes half closed, lips moving silently. "Mia, what are you doing?" Natalie hissed. No response. Without thinking, I rushed forward and pulled her down from the chair. As soon as I touched her, she gasped, like she was breaking free from underwater. She collapsed into my arms, shivering. I heard him," she whispered. "He said he was cold. He said he needed me." We carried her back downstairs, too terrified to sleep, clinging to each other under the harsh, cold light of the TV. The next morning, Mia's parents found the attic hatch open. No one had pulled it down. The ladder just hung there, the mouth of the attic gaping wide. When we checked the attic one last time before leaving, we found a single child's handprint smeared across the dusty floorboards, far too small to belong to any of us. Sleepovers are supposed to be a safe, fun escape, A night of laughter, secrets, and silly scares. But sometimes, the darkness holds more than just innocent games. Sometimes, it answers when you call. Tonight, we explore 5 true sleepover nights where the line between fun and fear was shattered, and survival became the only thing that mattered. Get ready, because these tales will stay with you long after the lights go out. What started as a harmless night among friends ended with a chilling reminder: some places are better left alone. And some spirits are desperate enough to find a way back, through anyone who listens. But this was only the beginning. The next story is even darker. Part 2. The Mirror Game. The second sleepover that ended in absolute horror happened during a humid summer night at Tyler's house. Tyler was the kind of friend who always pushed boundaries, the one who suggested sneaking out after curfew, playing with Ouija boards, and daring you to knock on the creepy neighbor's door. It was almost inevitable that something terrible would happen at one of his sleepovers. We just didn't expect it to happen that night. There were 5 of us: Tyler, me, Jason, Eric, and Mark. We were typical high school juniors looking for a cheap thrill, bored of the same movies and video games. Around midnight, Tyler dug through a battered cardboard box under his bed and pulled out something he said he found in his late grandmother's attic: an old, cracked handheld mirror. Its glass was cloudy and stained, like it had absorbed every terrible thing it had ever reflected. "This," Tyler said with a grin, "is for the mirror game." None of us had heard of it. Tyler explained the rules in a dramatic whisper. Sit alone in a dark room, stare into the mirror for 5 minutes without blinking, and chant a special phrase 3 times. "Show me what hides behind my eyes." Supposedly, you'd catch a glimpse of your true self, or something much worse. We laughed it off, but deep down, each of us felt a nervous itch. It sounded like one of those dumb urban legends that only scared little kids. Still, Tyler dared us one by one to try it. No one wanted to chicken out in front of the others, so we agreed. Jason went first. He sat in the tiny downstairs bathroom, door closed, lights off, armed only with the mirror and the words. The rest of us waited outside, listening. Nothing happened. 5 minutes later, Jason emerged looking unimpressed. "It's a scam," he said. "I didn't see Jack." Eric went next. "Same thing." Then Mark. "Same thing." Then it was my turn. I sat cross-legged on the cool tile floor, the mirror balanced on my knees. The only light seeped under the door, a faint silver glow that barely touched the edges of the room. My heart hammered in my ears. "Show me what hides behind my eyes," I whispered once. The mirror stared back, dull and lifeless. "Show me what hides behind my eyes," I repeated. Was the glass getting darker? Or was it my imagination? I hesitated before saying it a 3rd time. "Show me what hides behind my eyes." For a moment, nothing changed. Then movement. Not in the mirror. In the room. I caught a flicker of something in the corner of my eye, a shadow shifting where no shadow should have been. I snapped my head toward it, but there was nothing there. When I looked back at the mirror, my reflection was wrong. It smiled. I wasn't smiling. I dropped the mirror with a clatter and lunged for the door, heart pounding so loudly I thought it would burst out of my chest. "Scaredy cat," Tyler shouted when I bolted into the hallway, but when he saw my face, the teasing stopped. I couldn't explain what I saw. I didn't want to. Tyler, eager to prove himself, insisted on going last. He snatched the mirror off the floor, muttering about how we were all weak. We waited outside the door. 1 minute passed. 2 minutes. 3. 4. At 5 minutes, Tyler still hadn't come out. "Maybe he's messing with us," Jason said, but his voice lacked conviction. Eric knocked on the door. No response. He opened it a crack. The bathroom was empty. The mirror lay in the sink, shattered into a spiderweb of sharp, glittering pieces. The air smelled burnt, like scorched wood. But no Tyler. We searched the house, inside and out, calling his name. Panic set in fast. His parents were out of town, and the 5 of us were completely alone. In the kitchen, Jason finally found something. A footprint, burned black into the linoleum floor, a bare footprint that trailed from the bathroom to the back door, then simply vanished. We didn't sleep that night. We sat huddled together in the living room, every creak and groan of the house sending our nerves into overdrive. The police were called the next morning. They found no evidence of forced entry, no sign of struggle, no indication of where Tyler could have gone. Just that footprint. They ruled him a runaway, even though everyone who knew Tyler swore he would never have just left without his phone, his keys, his life. Weeks passed. Then the dreams started. Each of us began dreaming of Tyler, but not the Tyler we remembered. His face was twisted, grinning, his eyes black pits. In every dream, he whispered the same thing. "Behind your eyes. I'm waiting." I started sleeping with the lights on. Mark moved out of town. Jason refused to talk about it. Eric dropped out of school. As for me, I still can't look at a mirror for too long. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I see something move behind my reflection, just out of the corner of my eye. And sometimes, I think I see him, smiling. Some games aren't meant to be played. Some mirrors don't just show your reflection. They show what's waiting just beyond the surface, watching, patiently. Tyler's disappearance was a wound that never healed. But the next sleepover made even this nightmare feel almost merciful. Part 3. The House on Ridgeway Lane. The third sleepover that ended in absolute horror wasn't supposed to happen at all. We didn't plan to spend the night there. None of us wanted to even get close to the old house on Ridgeway Lane. Everyone in town knew the stories. Lights flickering in the windows long after it had been abandoned, shadows crossing the lawn with no one nearby, the unmistakable sound of sobbing when you passed too close. But teenagers have a way of convincing themselves they're invincible. And when Derek dared us to spend the night inside, just one night, none of us could back down without looking like cowards. It was Derek, me, Lena, Sam, and Katie. We packed flashlights, sleeping bags, and enough junk food to survive a siege, half laughing and half trembling as we trudged up the cracked stone path toward the house. The air felt heavier the closer we got, like something was pressing against our chests. The front door creaked open under Derek's push, revealing a hallway shrouded in darkness. Our flashlight beams struggled to penetrate the gloom, the light seeming almost swallowed by the air. "Just a night," Derek said with a forced grin. "Easy." The house smelled of rot and damp, but worse, something sour, something that made your stomach twist. Every floorboard groaned underfoot. Wallpaper peeled away from the walls in long, curling strips, and strange stains bloomed across the ceiling. We set up camp in what must have been the living room once. The fireplace was clogged with years of debris. A broken armchair leaned drunkenly in the corner. We spread our sleeping bags out and tried to act normal, telling jokes too loudly, eating chips we barely tasted. At around midnight, the temperature dropped. I don't mean it got chilly. I mean it felt like we had been plunged into an ice bath. Our breath puffed out in visible clouds. The flashlights flickered, dimmed, and then held steady. "What the hell?" Lena whispered. That's when we heard it, faint at first, like the scratching of mice behind the walls. Then louder, more insistent. Tap, tap, tap. Coming from upstairs. We all stared at each other. "Probably just an animal," Sam said, trying to convince himself more than us. "Only one way to find out," Derek said, grabbing his flashlight and heading for the staircase. Against every instinct screaming inside me, we followed. The stairs whined under our weight as we crept upward. At the top was a hallway lined with doors, all slightly ajar, all exhaling a breath of darkness. The tapping grew louder. It was coming from the third door on the left. Derek reached out and pushed it open. It was a child's bedroom. Faded blue wallpaper patterned with hot air balloons. A broken crib in one corner. A small wooden rocking horse swaying slightly, though the air was still. And at the window, a figure. It was the size of a child, but its proportions were wrong. Limbs too long, head cocked at an unnatural angle. It tapped one bony finger against the glass in slow, deliberate beats. Tap, tap, tap. Lena gasped. The figure turned toward us. Its face was a mess of shifting features, eyes too wide, mouth stitched into a ghastly smile, skin bubbling as if something squirmed underneath. We bolted. Down the stairs, across the living room, toward the front door. But when we tried to open it, the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it had been welded shut. The air around us grew thicker, almost syrupy. Every breath was a struggle. Behind us, the sound of footsteps, rapid, scrambling, getting closer. Katie screamed. Something yanked her backward into the shadows. We turned, shouting her name, but she was gone. Derek grabbed a nearby chair and hurled it through the window. The glass shattered outward in a rain of shards, but beyond it was not the yard, not the safety of the outside world. It was just more hallway. The house was folding in on itself, trapping us. Panic took over. We split up, Not because we thought it was smart, but because pure animal fear sent us running in different directions. I ended up in the kitchen, heart hammering against my ribs. The room was wrong. Cabinets hung open, the sink dripped black sludge, and something shifted just beyond the reach of my flashlight. Suddenly, Lena barreled into the kitchen, gasping for air. "We have to find Derek," she wheezed. No sign of Sam or Katie. Together, we stumbled down the twisting hallways that no longer matched the house's real layout. The walls pulsed, almost alive. Whispers brushed our ears, promising things we didn't dare listen to. Finally, in what looked like a sunroom choked with dead plants, we found Derek. Or what was left of him. He was curled in the corner, eyes wide open, lips moving soundlessly. His hands were clawed at his own face, deep gouges carved into his cheeks. Lena shrieked and dragged me away before I could even process it. We fled, half mad with terror. And then, blessedly, impossibly, the front door appeared ahead of us, wide open. We didn't question it. We sprinted into the night, not stopping until we collapsed in a heap on the sidewalk 2 streets over. Katie and Sam were never found. Derek was taken to a psychiatric hospital, catatonic. He never spoke again. His parents moved away, and the house on Ridgeway Lane was boarded up for good, though sometimes people swear they still hear tapping when they walk past. Tap, tap, tap. I haven't been able to sleep without nightmares since. Every dream leads me back to that house, back to the child's bedroom, back to that awful stitched smile. And in some dreams, the tapping isn't coming from the window anymore. It's coming from inside the walls. Not all places are meant to be entered. Some doors, once opened, never truly close. The house on Ridgeway Lane took more than just a few teenagers that night. It took their futures, their sanity, and maybe even their souls. But as horrifying as that night was, the next sleepover was even worse. Part 4. The Sleepover at Miller's Pond. The fourth story doesn't have a villain you can fight, or a house you can escape. It's worse than that. Because when the horror is inside your own mind, there's nowhere you can run. It was supposed to be a celebration. My cousin Jonah had just turned 17, and to mark the occasion, he invited a bunch of us to a sleepover at his family's cabin near Miller's Pond, a secluded, beautiful place nestled deep in the woods. There was no cell service out there. No neighbors for miles. Just the dense wall of trees, the ripple of water against the rocky shore, and the heavy stillness of the wilderness. Perfect for a night of campfires, ghost stories, and teenage stupidity. We got there just before sunset. The pond gleamed like a polished mirror, untouched and serene. The trees whispered as the wind moved through them. Everything felt peaceful, untouched. But as the sun sank behind the trees and the darkness poured in, that peace curdled into something else. Something watchful. We built a fire outside and joked around, roasting marshmallows and daring each other to tell the scariest story. It was around the time Jonah began his second story that we noticed the water. It wasn't rippling anymore. It was boiling. Tiny, frantic bubbles rose to the surface, as if something huge was stirring below. "Probably just fish," Jonah said, but even he didn't sound convinced. Then we heard it. A low humming. Barely audible at first, just a vibration in the air. It came from the woods, from the pond, from everywhere. We looked at each other nervously, laughed it off, tried to ignore the way the hair on the back of our neck stood up. We decided to go inside. The cabin was old but cozy, filled with the smell of wood smoke and pine. We laid out our sleeping bags and started a movie, pretending we weren't scared. It worked for a little while, until the humming returned, louder this time, rattling the windows. We muted the TV, listened. The humming grew into a chorus, layered voices chanting something just beneath the edge of understanding. Jonah grabbed a flashlight and peered out the front window. I watched his face drain of color. "What is it?" I whispered. He didn't answer, just slowly backed away. I crept forward and looked. Shapes stood at the edge of the trees. Dozens of them. Figures tall, thin, indistinct, their features blurred like a camera out of focus. They didn't move. They just stood there, humming. We snapped the blinds shut and backed away from the windows. "What do we do?" someone asked. Nobody had an answer. The cabin suddenly felt too small, too vulnerable. The walls too thin. The shadows too deep. We decided to stay together in the main room, weapons in hand, a fire poker, a kitchen knife, a broken chair leg. It was laughable, really, as if those things could protect us from whatever was outside. The humming went on for hours, rising and falling like the tide. Sometime around 3 a.m., it stopped. The silence was worse. We sat frozen, ears straining. No footsteps. No breathing. Nothing. Jonah dared to crack open the front door. The pond shimmered under the moonlight. The trees stood silent and still. No figures. No movement. It was like nothing had ever been there. We almost convinced ourselves we'd imagined it all. Almost. Until we noticed the footprints. Hundreds of them. Leading up to the cabin from the woods, circling the house again and then leading back into the water. And they weren't human footprints. They were wrong. Elongated. Misshapen. Toes too long. Heels too narrow. Some prints showed only 3 or 4 toes. Others had 7 or more. That's when the dreams began. Each of us, me, Jonah, our friends, started having the same nightmare. Night after night. We dreamt of standing at the edge of the pond, paralyzed. Of dark shapes rising from the water, taller than the trees, arms like ropes, faces featureless except for mouths, wide, lipless mouths that stretched open in silent screams. In the dreams, we would wake up floating in the center of the pond, too far to swim back, watching the figures gather on the shore. Some nights, I would wake up to find my sleeping bag soaked, not with sweat, but with pond water, cold and black and reeking of algae. It got worse. One night, Jonah sleepwalked straight out of the cabin. We caught him just before he waded into the pond. His eyes were wide open, but blank, and his lips were moving, mouthing words none of us could hear. We couldn't stay after that. We packed up at dawn and fled back to town, leaving the cabin, the pond, and the nightmares behind. Or so we thought. Jonah was never the same. He became distant, hollow. Sometimes he would sit for hours, staring at nothing, humming that same low tune under his breath. A month later, he disappeared. They found his shoes at the edge of Miller's Pond. His footprints led straight into the water. But there were no footprints coming out. The official report said he drowned. But I know the truth. They called him back. And one day, I know they'll come for the rest of us, too. Because some nights, when I close my eyes, I'm back at the water's edge. And the humming has never really stopped. It's just waiting. Some terrors don't chase you. They wait for you to come back. And if you don't, they find another way to reach you. But the final sleepover, the 5th story, would show that sometimes the most horrifying monsters aren't outside. They're the people you think you know best. Part 5. The sleepover at Grandma's house. You'd think, after everything I've told you, I would have sworn off sleepovers forever. But life has a cruel way of making you forget until it's too late. This one wasn't at some haunted forest or creepy old cabin. It was at my grandma's house, a modest, aging home tucked away in a sleepy neighborhood where nothing bad ever happened. Or so I believed. It started when my parents had to leave town for a wedding. I was 16, and rather than leave me alone, they asked my grandma to watch me for the weekend. I didn't mind. Grandma was sweet, a little eccentric, but harmless. She made the best cookies, told the corniest jokes, and always tucked me in like I was still 5 years old. When I got there Friday evening, the house smelled like cinnamon and something else, something sour, hidden beneath the sweetness. Just an old house smell, I told myself. We spent the night playing board games and watching old black and white movies. Was nice. Until bedtime. I went to the guest room, the one I always stayed in when I was little, and unpacked my things. That's when I noticed it. A mirror. A huge, old-fashioned mirror had been placed in the room. I didn't remember it being there before. Its frame was ornate, carved with twisting vines and strange, almost grotesque faces. And the glass was wrong. It wasn't clear. It shimmered slightly, like the surface of a pool disturbed by a single drop of water. I shivered but shook it off. That night, I climbed into bed and tried to sleep. Sometime after midnight, I woke up. The room was freezing, my breath visible in the moonlight streaming through the window. I rolled over and screamed. Someone was standing at the foot of the bed. But when I blinked, there was no one there. Just the mirror, reflecting my terrified face back at me. I convinced myself it was a dream. Sleep paralysis, maybe. I buried myself under the covers and eventually drifted off. The next morning at breakfast, I mentioned it to Grandma. She smiled strangely, her lips twitching at the corners. "Oh, that old thing," she said, waving a hand. "It belonged to my grandmother. They say it keeps the bad dreams away." I forced a laugh, but something about her tone unsettled me. The second night was worse. I fell asleep facing away from the mirror. At some point, I woke up again, not because of noise, but because I felt it. A presence. Slowly, heart hammering, I turned over. The mirror was dark. Pitch black. Like a portal to somewhere else entirely. And in the darkness, something moved. At first, it was just a flicker, like a shadow brushing the glass. Then a hand pressed against the inside of the mirror. Pale, thin, claw-like fingers scraping against the surface. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. The hand was followed by a face. But it wasn't mine. It was a warped, broken version. My mouth too wide, my eyes hollow and black, my skin stretched tight over jagged bones. The reflection smiled. And slowly, impossibly, it began to push through the glass. I finally tore my eyes away and bolted for the door. It wouldn't open. The handle wouldn't even budge, as if it had been welded shut. Behind me, the mirror crackled. The thing, the other me, was almost free. I pounded on the door, screamed for Grandma, for anyone, but no sound came out. My throat felt sewn shut. In my panic, I remembered something. The faces carved into the mirror's frame. They weren't random. They were people. Trapped. Screaming. Frozen forever. I grabbed the bedside lamp and hurled it at the mirror. The glass shattered. Instantly, the cold vanished. The room warmed. The air loosened around me. The door swung open easily, and I stumbled into the hallway, gasping for breath. Grandma was standing there, her face twisted with fury I'd never seen before. "You weren't supposed to break it," she hissed. "Now it's loose." I didn't wait to find out what she meant. I ran out of the house barefoot, into the night, not stopping until I reached the neighbor's house 3 streets over. They called my parents, the police. When they searched Grandma's house, they found dozens of old, cracked mirrors hidden in the attic. And photos of children. Kids who had once stayed there, kids whose faces were eerily similar to the twisted figures carved into the mirror's frame. Grandma was taken away, but she didn't fight it. She just kept smiling that strange, too wide smile. I never saw her again. But sometimes when I pass by a mirror out of the corner of my eye, I swear I see something smiling back. Not my reflection. Not anymore. Something that got out that night. Something that's been waiting ever since. Waiting for another sleepover. Another open door. Another mirror. Not every sleepover ends with laughs and memories. Some end in terror. Some never end at all. And sometimes, the most familiar places hide the darkest secrets. So the next time you're invited to a sleepover, look around carefully. Listen closely. And whatever you do, don't trust the mirrors. You never know who or what might be staring back. Another you.